The traveling carnival arrived on the outskirts of town beneath the glow of a pale moon. By day it looked weathered and unremarkable, a dusty collection of canvas tents and squeaking rides. But come dusk, the place transformed into a vibrant mosaic of flashing lights and whirling colors. Strangers and locals alike bustled through the main thoroughfare, enticed by the swirling aromas of popcorn, cotton candy, and sizzling sausages. Children tore free from parents' hands, racing between game booths draped with cheap plush toys. A masked juggler tossed batons in the air, a whir of glossy red capturing flickering spotlights. Somewhere in the distance, an organ pipe squealed a jaunty tune, but it was oddly off-pitch, hinting at the uneasy wonder beneath the carnival's veneer. Kara had grown up loving such traveling festivals. There was something about their impermanence that fascinated her. The idea that entire worlds could pop into existence beneath the carnival tents and vanish again with barely a trace. That evening she walked through the gates alone, liberated by the sense of anonymity a carnival always promised. She tried her hand at the ring toss, losing interest once the booth operator smirked knowingly, as if defeat were guaranteed. She spotted a towering Ferris wheel, lights blinking in patterns that threatened to mesmerize her, but she felt a tug from another direction, a colorful tent boasting a gaudy sign. The maze of mirrors, see your true self. A swirl of excitement and apprehension rippled through her. Carnival mazes, especially of mirrors, were not unusual, but something about this one was different. Every edge of the large tent was decorated with swirling designs that seemed to move if she stared for too long. A carny, face half hidden behind a tattered hat, nodded at her approach, offering no words but gesturing smoothly toward the open flaps. Kara paused at the threshold. A hush seemed to settle over the immediate area, as if the carnival's cacophony dulled once she stepped closer to the entrance. Outside, the world blinked with neon life. Inside, only darkness awaited, punctuated by sporadic reflections of colored lights, countless mirrors distorting space and depth. Kara felt her pulse quicken with the anticipation of something unknown and possibly dangerous. She entered, the tent's canvas shutting out the carnival's rowdy light and sound, leaving only the faint music drifting in from beyond the cloth walls. Within a yard, she found herself surrounded by mirrors, angled in unexpected ways, tilted at the ceiling, cut off at the waist or elongated to an absurd degree. A ripple of laughter was followed by an unease as she recognized her own face shifting in each reflection. Head ballooned in one, eyes narrowed in another. She maneuvered deeper inside, bumping her elbow against a cool glass surface, startled by the hush of footsteps echoing behind her. But no one followed. She was alone, thoroughly enveloped in a labyrinth. In the center of the tent's first chamber, a single overhead bulb swayed gently, its filament flickering. The reflections multiplied the small glow, creating an eerie dance of shadow and light on Kara's face. She pressed forward, relying on the palm of her hand against each glass wall to guide her. No matter which way she turned, the same hesitant figure stared back, wearing an expression of guarded curiosity. Eventually, she came to a corridor of mirrors that shifted strangely underfoot, as if the floor too was reflective, or perhaps angled in a bizarre twist. To keep her balance, she splayed her hands wide, brushing the glass with trembling fingertips. A chilling gust of wind, seemingly impossible within the enclosed tent, tickled the back of her neck. She tried to dismiss the goosebumps as part of the experience. This was a carnival attraction after all, designed to unnerve, to amuse, to quicken the heart. But the further she walked, the more the sense of playful unease eroded, replaced by something sharper. The next mirror she faced held a reflection of her that looked distorted far beyond a simple carnival trick. The Kara in the mirror had gray streaks in her hair, crow's feet etched around her eyes, and worry lines spanning her forehead. This older version of herself looked downright haunted. Despite the knowledge that reflection illusions were common in such mazes, Kara's breath caught at the authenticity of this aging. Her father frowned. She leaned forward, her own face nearly pressed to the mirror, searching for the lines that had appeared so convincingly. They remained only on the reflection side, as if that mirror revealed a possible future. A commotion, faint shouting sounded from somewhere in the maze. Kara tore herself away from the unsettling image and followed the noise. She turned a corner, careful not to walk into another reflective wall, and found that the curtain transitions between sections had vanished. Instead, the path seemed to wind seamlessly into new mirror corridors, each one more intricate than the last. The lighting became even more peculiar. One corridor bathed in greenish hue, the next in a throbbing red, and another illuminated by a too bright white beam that flickered as if near death. Distorted laughter echoed through the space, merging with the faint organ music from the carnival outside. She could feel her nerves fraying. Rounding another bend, she discovered someone else stumbling against a wall. He was tall and lean, wearing a hoodie that hung on his frame. He spun at her approach, fear etched into his features. "Are you real?" he asked, voice unsteady. Kara nodded, unsettled by the intensity in his eyes. He muttered, "I've been going in circles for I don't even know how long." Kara suggested they try to find the exit together. He readily agreed, introducing himself as Travis, a drifter passing through town. They moved side by side, scanning each new mirror for a sign of real passage to the outside. Reflection after reflection faced them, some warped to comedic effect, others eerily accurate, except for subtle changes, shadows under Travis's eyes that seemed to deepen with each step, glimpses of Kara's reflection, bearing new marks of anguish. She tried to steady her racing mind. Perhaps they had gotten turned around, or perhaps the operators had set up a particularly elaborate labyrinth. She reasoned it had to be comprehensible somewhere. There was a door, a flap, or a seam in the tent leading out. They ventured deeper. The corridor walls shimmered with an almost liquid quality now, funneling them toward narrower and narrower passages. Once or twice, someone else would dart across a reflection, gone too quickly for Kara to be sure they were real. One figure stood just long enough for Kara to see the panic on her face, a teenage girl who silently begged for help. In a heartbeat, the girl's reflection seemed to vanish, replaced by a mirror that revealed the same corridor, but empty. A chill radiated through Kara's body. She exchanged a glance with Travis, who looked as though he, too, was close to panic. Yet they pushed on, an unspoken understanding tying them together in fear. They came to a dead end where a single mirror faced them. This mirror didn't distort or shift their images. Instead, it seemed to reflect an entirely different environment. Kara's reflection walked through a rundown apartment strewn with empty takeout containers and unpaid bills. She observed herself, older by some years, rummaging desperately for money, hair a tangled mess. A single flickering bulb in the apartment's ceiling cast harsh shadows across her face. She knelt over a battered suitcase, rummaging for something. Then, in the reflection, she pulled out a piece of paper, divorce papers from the looks of it, and burst into tears. The heartbreak was palpable. Kara swallowed, feeling uncomfortably like a voyeur peeking into a deeply personal moment. A twisting dread in her gut made her want to turn away, but she couldn't. She forced herself to blink, to look at Travis for some anchor, some reminder that they were in a carnival maze and not in that tragic future. Beside her, Travis's gaze locked on his own reflection. He stood outside a chain-link fence in a deserted lot, slumped in tattered clothes, aimless and destitute. A figure on the other side of the fence wore a police uniform, and behind him, a row of identical fences stretched off into the distance, each containing a cell. Travis started to shake. I was in trouble once," he muttered, voice hoarse. "But I straightened out. I paid my dues." He smacked a hand against the mirror in frustration, trying to break the image, but the glass didn't shatter. Instead, the reflection persisted, dark and unyielding. He turned to Kara, eyes filled with guilt or desperation. "I can't go back to that. I won't." The maze seemed to respond to his outburst. A faint laugh, or perhaps a cry, hissed through the mirrored corridors. The overhead lights flickered. The path behind them was no longer a corridor of deliverance, but another reflective trap. Kara's stomach churned. They had to keep moving, though each step seemed to lead them deeper into a realm where illusions felt devastatingly intimate. She realized then that it wasn't just about seeing themselves in the present from odd angles. The place was reflecting their deepest anxieties, their darkest possibilities, as if conjuring up personal tragedies for the amusement of some hidden hand. An echo of footsteps alerted them to another presence. They rushed forward. In a corner of the next chamber, hunched near a support beam, they found a woman with tear-streaked cheeks. She had carnival stamps on her arms, tokens from multiple rides. Her eyes were red from crying. She stared at a mirror, transfixed by the nightmarish scene it displayed, a hospital bed containing her comatose child, tubes and beeping monitors telling a story of tragedy. Her trembling lips hinted at a silent prayer. When Kara coaxed her gently away from the mirror, the woman mumbled, "I can't lose him. I can't let him slip away. Please, I never wanted to see that." Then she broke into sobs. Gently, Kara and Travis pulled the woman up. Travis half carried her as they searched for an exit, hearts pounding with the knowledge that whatever they might see next could be worse. Time lost its meaning amid the reflections. Kara felt as though hours could have passed, or perhaps only minutes. She grew thirsty, her breath came in ragged gasps, and the atmosphere pressed in on them. At one point they turned a corner, expecting a mirror wall, and found instead an open pocket of space. It had no mirrored surfaces, only black curtains draped from ceiling to floor. Travis carefully nudged one aside. They discovered another occupant, a teenage girl, presumably the same one Kara had glimpsed earlier. Big-eyed and trembling, she turned to them in desperation. "I can't find the way out. It keeps changing," she said, voice raw. All four of them now, joined by desperation, huddled in that dark pocket of the tent. The girl introduced herself as Maggie. She clutched a small plush bear to her chest, something she must have won earlier in the night. Her expression was that of exhaustion and fear. The woman introduced herself as Cass. They needed a plan. Kara suggested systematically moving through the corridors in one direction to avoid confusion, but each time they re-entered the mirror passages, the layout seemed altered. Was the maze shifting? Or was it only their perception twisting under stress? In one corridor, instead of a reflection of their future, they saw only darkness, as if the mirror no longer worked. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was still reflective glass, just reflecting a black void. A sensation of vertigo overwhelmed Kara, and she stumbled back. Travis reached out to steady her before she fell. Maggie bit her lip. "I think we're supposed to see something," she whispered. "I think these mirrors want to show us things, but I can't stand it." Her voice cracked on the last word. They pressed on. The next disturbing sight arrived without warning, a mirror that revealed Kara alone in an empty apartment. Her phone glowed near her on a coffee table, the screen flashing repeatedly with missed calls from someone named Mom. A sense of regret pulsed through Kara as she realized she must be ignoring her mother's calls. Over the phone icon, a text message in bold letters read, "This might be your last chance to speak with your father. Call back now." The reflection, Kara stared impassively at the screen, tears welling at the corners of her eyes but letting them fall silently. As she gazed out at this potential future, she felt the strangest sensation of distance and sorrow, as if the mirror were physically tugging her forward. She willed herself to move on, swallowing back tears. Before turning away, she saw the reflection. Kara's lips formed the words, "I'm too late." The phone dimmed and the room vanished in the swirl of the mirror's distortion. Cass wiped at her eyes, still haunted by what she had seen before. She whimpered that this place sank its claws into their minds, feeding on fear. Travis seemed prepared to punch his way through one of the mirror walls, but when he struck at a corner, the glass didn't crack at all. Instead, it rippled like water. They watched, transfixed, as his hand disappeared within the reflection. He yanked it back, panic in his eyes. "It felt like I was reaching into nothingness," he said. The mirror settled into a normal reflection again, refusing to let them see that watery distortion a second time. Step by step, corner after corner, they navigated deeper. The carnival's music had grown faint, a distant memory replaced by a hush so complete that they could hear their own breathing. Maggie began shaking uncontrollably, tears streaming down her face. She asked them repeatedly if they thought the carnival was still open, if there was any chance that help would come. Cass tried to soothe her, but the older woman could barely keep her own hands from trembling. Kara felt a powerful surge of responsibility for them all, though she had never asked for this role. She had only wanted an evening of harmless amusement. At last they reached another clearing, if one could call it that. A towering mirror rose in front of them, easily twice their height, with swirling patterns dancing at the corners. The glass vibrated with an otherworldly shimmer, as if alive. Approaching it, Kara felt her body enveloped by a low hum that seemed to emanate from within the mirror. She swallowed nervously and looked for a reflection, but initially saw none. Instead, the surface swirled with murky shapes that eventually congealed into an image. The scene was of an older carnival, perhaps from decades past. A crowd of people stood outside a similar mirror maze as the canvas walls bulged with trapped hands. Fear radiated from their ghostly faces. Travis cursed under his breath, stepping away from the mirror. He quietly asked, Is that us, just in a different time?" The question lingered. Kara's eyes remained fixed on the swirling shapes. She imagined countless souls lured into the labyrinth across the ages, never finding their way out. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Could that be the maze's true nature? A predatory force that roamed from town to town, feeding off fear and possibility. Cass was the first to break the silence. She grabbed Kara's arm. "We can't let it show us anymore," she said with desperation. "We have to break free." Maggie shivered in agreement. Travis hesitated, but nodded. Relief sparked in Kara's mind. If they were united in the will to escape, perhaps it would be enough to push them to some exit. They retreated from the towering mirror and immediately took a different corridor to avoid any further glimpses of the horrifying scenes. This path, confoundingly, led to a cluster of mirror-framed arches that seemed to lead into multiple directions, or possible ways forward, each arch flickering with a distinct color: red, blue, green, and gold. The group paused. Travis stepped forward, trying to peer into one arch after another, but the reflections were nearly identical until one stepped fully inside. Cass huddled next to Maggie. Kara reeled from the oppressive sense that the labyrinth was deliberately offering them choices, playing with them like a cat toying with a mouse. Travis tried the red arch, only to recoil a second later. He described glimpsing a future where he was back in prison, wearing a haunted expression. Maggie tested the blue arch, letting out a sob when she saw something too dreadful to repeat. Each arch appeared to contain a corridor lined with illusions so potent even a few steps were enough to unravel their nerves. They returned to the center, hearts pounding. Kara refused to give in, mumbling a mantra to herself. "It's not real. It's not real." She selected the green arch and forced herself to walk swiftly. The others followed, their hesitant footsteps echoing in the claustrophobic space. A swirl of pale, sickly light illuminated the mirrors here. Each reflection tinted the color of seaweed. Kara glimpsed flickers of her own shape twisted into unnatural angles, but she refused to pause. She led them onward, brushing aside illusions as best she could. Once, she caught sight of a reflection pinned beneath the wreck of a car, eyes wide with final terror, but she pressed her lips together and marched on. Miraculously, they found a new junction, an opening in the mirror walls, revealing a wide, empty corridor of plain canvas. The glow of carnival lights seeped in through the gaps, and night air drifted along the ground. Cass nearly collapsed with relief. "It's real," she breathed. "This has to be it." Travis hurried to the far end of the corridor, carefully pushing aside the canvas. Through a slit in the tent, they could see the carnival grounds. The Ferris wheel turned slowly, and from somewhere just beyond, people's voices carried across the night, laughing, shouting, living. Maggie sprinted into the open air first, choking back a sob. Travis guided Cass through, his arm around her shoulders. Kara paused a moment, noticing a final mirror to one side of the exit, almost hidden by the canvas folds. A whisper in her mind urged her to look, to see if it remained as ominous as the others. She inched forward, heart clenched with dread. Her reflection stood normal, clad in the same clothes, face pale from stress. Yet behind her reflection was that tall mirror again, the one from earlier that had shown the old carnival. The ghostly crowd pressed against the walls. She realized in that fleeting moment that their reflections had been captured among that petrified group. She almost thought she could see herself behind the canvas walls, hands raised in a silent scream. Her stomach lurched, and she tore her gaze away. With a final exhalation, she ducked through the slit and emerged onto the chilly carnival grounds. It was disorienting to be out in the pulsing lights again. A gentle breeze ruffled her hair, tangling it from the tension of the maze. People walked past at a casual pace, nibbling on snacks or hurrying from ride to ride. The four of them gathered near a flickering lamppost, hearts still pounding. Travis gave a shaky laugh of disbelief and relief. Maggie was on the verge of hysterical tears. Cass dropped to her knees, hugging the teenage girl close. Kara realized her own hands were shaking so badly that she had to force them to steady. They had left the maze behind them, yet the images haunted their minds, refusing to vanish. Each future they had witnessed left a scar. Could it still come to pass? Was it a warning? Or had the carnival conjured illusions out of their darkest fears? No one spoke of returning to check for others, and none of them wanted to step near that tent again. They limped away, forming an unspoken pact never to mention the horrors they'd seen. Yet even as they drifted toward the carnival exit, they couldn't escape the feeling that the maze of mirrors was watching them, hungry for their secrets. The organ music droned on, and a bark of laughter split the air, followed by applause from a nearby stage show. The normal sounds of the carnival now made Kara's skin crawl. The ephemeral joy that used to allure her so much felt like a mocking facade. In the following days, each tried to return to normal life, but normalcy had become a fragile concept. Kara stayed up late into the night, phone clutched tight in her palms, excavating old family photos and text conversations as if searching for any sign that she might slide into that future heartbreak. She even called her mother to check in on her father's condition. Though her father was hale and hearty, that one perfect conversation ended with her mother laughing, telling her it was nice of her to ask so earnestly. Still, Kara could not shake the dread that the reflection had planted in her mind. Travis, for his part, hovered on the edge of suspicion, checking the local news for crime stories, half convinced he might be framed for something he'd. Cass found herself at her son's side, refusing to let him out of her sight, jumping at every cough or sneeze, as though her desperate vigilance alone might keep him safe from any hospital bed fate. And Maggie seemed traumatized by nightmares that made her recoil from mirrors entirely. Her parents grew alarmed at her sudden refusal to go near reflective surfaces, but she couldn't bring herself to explain. Word soon spread that the carnival had folded its tents and vanished in the middle of the night, slipping away to the next town without fanfare. No trace remained at the edge of the field except for flattened grass where carnival rides once stood. That maze of mirrors that had so thoroughly trapped them was gone, leaving only dry ground behind. Rumors fluttered among the locals about people who had gone missing, though official reports were not conclusive. Some gossips claimed a few visitors never returned from the carnival, while the authorities dismissed it as hearsay fueled by the traveling show's mysterious nature. For Kara, Travis, Cass, and Maggie, a weight lingered over them like a dark cloud. Their nightmares conjured the glass corridors, the reflections of dire possibilities. Who could say they were false illusions? The maze had plucked real fears from each of their hearts, unveiling them with a too real clarity. Perhaps the maze's power lay not in mere trick mirrors, but in some malicious force that harnessed the future's darkest pathways to ensnare unsuspecting souls. For a long time, Kara walked with a sense of borrowed time. Whenever she felt complacent, she recalled the image of herself ignoring phone calls, the heartbreak etched into her reflection's eyes. She'd remind herself that she still had the choice to pick up the phone, to remain close with her family. She realized that while the vision had terrified her, it could also serve as a warning, guiding her to make different choices. Over time, she allowed a grain of hope to mix with her lingering dread. Months passed, and each of them, Kara, Travis, Cass, and Maggie, began to heal in their own ways. They stayed in touch, forming a strange bond out of shared trauma. They met for coffee occasionally, though each avoided glancing in the reflective surfaces of the coffee shop's windows if they could help it. Small talk turned into updates about life changes they made. Travis found stable work and a place to stay. Cass's son recovered swiftly from a minor illness. Maggie began therapy to cope with her nightmares, and Kara, though often haunted by glimpses of that older, broken self in the mirror, strove to keep her relationships intact, especially with her family. Still, late at night, when she found herself alone, Kara sometimes imagined distant carnival lights flickering on a horizon far away. She pictured a battered sign reading, "The Maze of Mirrors, see your true self," beckoning unwary souls. She would see in her mind's eye a swirl of illusions, each more painful than the last, drawing from darkest regrets and unspoken anxieties. She could almost hear the echoes of frantic footsteps lost in endless glass corridors. Sleep would elude her, and she would get up to pace or splash water on her face, determined not to look too long in the bathroom mirror. Eventually, though, she began to sense that her future was not locked in the mirror's reflection. Her life was hers to shape. Perhaps the maze had tried to show them the worst roads they could take, but the simple act of survival and escape meant they had the power to avoid those paths. Whatever sinister presence lurked in the traveling carnival's tent, it fed on fear and hopelessness, but had also offered a twisted sort of clarity. Through horror, it had forced its visitors to confront the hidden truths behind their insecurities. On a brisk autumn morning, Kara stepped outside to watch the sunrise. She felt a pang of dread at the thought that the maze could be setting up somewhere else, preparing to torment a new group of unsuspecting thrill-seekers. But then she breathed in the crisp air and let her anxiety melt away a little. She had changed. Her worst fears might still exist, always lurking, but she refused to be paralyzed by them anymore. Turning to head back inside, she caught her own faint reflection in the window. A reflection that matched her actual face, unaged and unbroken by regret. There, despite the swirl of old nightmares, she saw in her eyes a glimmer of determination. It wasn't a carnival trick, it was something real. And as she turned away, she realized that the maze of mirrors had not won. She had chosen hope over its haunting illusions, leaving those dire possible futures trapped in the twisting glass corridors that vanished with the carnival's departure. And somewhere, across countless miles of winding road, the traveling carnival rumbled on, ready to unfold anew at the next town's edge. Its attractions would once again light up the night sky, inviting the curious to step inside. The maze of mirrors would stand at the heart of it, waiting for fresh souls to test and torment. Yet for those who escaped like Kara, Travis, Cass, and Maggie, the reflection that lingered longest was not the one in the shimmering glass, but the one in their own heart, reminding them of the power and peril hidden in every choice they made.